Welcome to Abolition Radio, the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails, inviting you to join the fight to end human trafficking.
Oh, give me eyes to see. Oh, give me strength to lead. You give me all I need. So give me courage to believe.
Each week, Abolition Radio sheds light on the darkness of modern slavery, celebrates the work of abolitionists who are fighting for freedom, and equips the church to engage in the work of justice with hope rooted in God's Word. Our goal is to see a radio audience become an army of gospel activists.
You're in the neighborhoods we live in. You're in the ones we're passing by. You're in the ones we call our neighbors. And the ones who still escape our eyes.
Now, here's the host of Abolition Radio, founder and executive director of Love Never Fails, Vanessa Scott.
Thanks, Dave, and welcome back to another episode of Abolition Radio. And I'm really jazzed today. Our house is full of guests. We have 3 in-house and 2 online. And let's start with those online. We have Jason Tremieux from the Super Bowl Workgroup and the Super Bowl host committee, actually. And I'm going to let him introduce himself here in a minute. But we also have on the line Catherine Jollock, history professor at Stanford, and Sharon Denoa, who is the coordinator of the South Bay Coalition Against Human Trafficking, Stefan Sonberg from Stanford as well, professor at Stanford at the moment, and Mr. Brian Woe, who is with the Bay Area Anti-Trafficking Coalition. Welcome, everybody. Man, that was a mouthful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Thank you.
And welcome to Abolition Radio. Well, first off, if you haven't gathered, I've mentioned Super Bowl Work Group and human trafficking. Our focus today is going to be on sports and trafficking. And is there a correlation? And how do we all play a part? How we have come together, like I said, as a Super Bowl work group to work on that group and talk about this issue. But before we do that, I do want to take a moment. We have recently had some big sports news here in the Bay Area with the Golden State Warriors, Dub Nation, and we want to give a big shout out to those players and fans who did it all. Yay, love it.
Go Dubs.
Go Dubs. And congratulations on your winning the National Basketball Association Championship. So, Jason, I want to start with you. What is it that you do as a Super Bowl host committee?
Well, thank you so much for having me and having the Super Bowl host committee on this call. It's great, all the folks that you have assembled. We continue to be inspired working with you as part of the Super Bowl work group, No Traffic Ahead, participating in the Freedom Summit, and just we continue to be a gracious part of these meetings. So the Super Bowl 50 host committee is the local organizing committee responsible for planning and preparing for Super Bowl 50, which will be held here in the Bay Area in February. And I, as the Vice President for Community Relations, I have the awesome task to lead all the programming for what we have made as a foundational goal of this Super Bowl to leave a legacy of community impact, so that it's about more than just a game. While we do and will deliver the most exceptional Super Bowl to date, we want to make sure that the Bay Area region benefits and that people can see tangible and meaningful impacts, especially in our communities. And so I do that through a couple of key initiatives. I won't spend time on them other than to say our 50 Fund, which is our signature philanthropic initiative. I also work on our small business and diverse business inclusion initiative called Business Connect, along with some other community-facing programs, including being a part of the Super Bowl work group with the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking, and making sure that we can contribute to the efforts that are being leveled here to make sure that not just Super Bowl, but year-long, we combat human trafficking here in the Bay Area.
Yes, for sure. And you mentioned the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking. So, Sharon, I'll turn the same question over to you. What is it that you do?
So I'm the coordinator with the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking, which is a collaborative of about 35 different agencies. It's a really diverse group of interested agencies, including law enforcement, legal service providers, direct service providers, and outreach groups. Last year, I guess about this time actually, we decided to break off and start a multi-county work group focused specifically on the Super Bowl and really trying to have a very informed approach about it. So we partnered with Stefan Sonnenberg at Stanford and Catherine Joluk to start doing case studies about different cities that have dealt with sporting events, the relationship to trafficking, and what we could learn. And so that kind of spearheaded our Super Bowl work group, which actually we called No Traffic Ahead now.
Yes.
And it's for a lot of reasons that we'll probably go more into later. But essentially, I coordinate that group as well.
Yay. Yay. Thank you to both of you, Jason as well as Sharon, and the work that you do. So, Catherine.
Yes.
Can you tell us how you came into the picture?
I came into the picture in a rather roundabout way. I'm a historian of Eastern Europe and women in communism and women in war, and learned about trafficking in post-communist Europe and decided to put together a course on human trafficking, so I started learning a lot more globally, and that, interestingly enough, took me to learn about human trafficking locally. And so I co-teach a large course on human trafficking, and one of the important elements of the course is service learning. So some of our students are paired with community partners, including the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking. And so through that, I've gotten active in the group as well, and am a member of the Super Bowl work group and working on the No Traffic Ahead projects, and our students have also contributed to them.
Yes, they have, and I must say that even though they're not my students, I'm so proud of them. And
Thank you. We do too.
I really enjoyed coming to your class to speak, and you are doing great things there with that class. Very knowledgeable. The students are on the topic and very eager to take action steps themselves to be a part of the solution as opposed to the problem. Thanks so much. And Mr. Stefan, how do you, in your position there at Stanford, and tell us a little bit, too, about what you're headed to do, but tell us where you come into play.
Well, for the past 4 years, I've been working as a clinical supervising attorney in the Human Rights Clinic at the law school. So what we do is we do real-world projects with law students in their second and third years that focus on human rights. Typically, our definition of human rights encompasses not just what we traditionally talk about in the U.S., like torture and free press, but also things like poverty and access to housing, access to education, food. And we also try and make a point of working both domestically and internationally. And so about 4 years ago, we started working with an anti-trafficking organization in San Francisco, doing work on the nexus between the medical community and trafficking, and can doctors or people who work in hospitals or who work in medical facilities do a better job trying to identify and provide real services and real sort of information to people who potentially might be trafficked. And through that work, I met Professor Joluk and Sharon and Brian. And so more recently, our clinic and, really in collaboration have been doing a lot more work preparing for the Super Bowl.
Right.
I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but increasingly there's a sense, not just in the U.S., but also globally, that these kinds of major sporting events or major events in general, it could be a fireworks, it could be a major, tech convention, whatever it is,
right,
that it's not just the tourism industry that knows that represents a major influx of people from out of town, but also, unfortunately, the traffickers who are also running a business on the same model. So because of that idea, we started thinking about how can the Bay Area really prepare in a systematic and sort of in line with better practices, prepare for the Super Bowl.
Yes, and I like that word systematic. We're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. And so, Brian, tell us one more time, what you're doing.
So I am the Director of Partnerships for the Bay Area Anti-Trafficking Coalition. My co-founder, Betty Ann Bovingen, and I started this nonprofit 4 years ago. We just had our 4th birthday with really the vision to bring everybody who's working against human trafficking in the Bay Area to work together in a collective way so that we could share resources better, develop best practices, make sure we're not duplicating efforts, so that together we could do a lot more and have greater impact than we could if everybody was kind of doing their own thing.
That is so cool. Very, very cool. And I have the great pleasure in working with all of you, and that I'm so jazzed about that. So we will continue this conversation, and we're going to talk about that systematic approach and what is that and how to go about that, and what we would like to do as a work group, as No Traffic Ahead here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We'll be right back.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages.
Trash bills weighing you down? At Case Industries, we specialize in lowering waste costs and providing trash consolidation and compaction services for multifamily properties, condos, and commercial shopping centers. Let us help you reduce operating expenses and increase property NOI. Case Industries, saving the planet, saving you money. Contact us today for a property trash and recycling assessment online at caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. That's caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. Case Industries, the property manager's friend.
Hi, I'm Sandra Herrera, CEO of Case Industries. I've found that many employers are looking for ways to help the community but don't know how. I encourage you to consider supporting Abolition Radio as a corporate sponsor. Love Never Fails offers all the resources necessary to help young women and men overcome the trauma of exploitation and abuse. And that's why I'm proud to have Case Industries supporting Abolition Radio.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
And welcome back to another segment of Abolition Radio. And some of you might be wondering, where is the regular host? Well, I am missing my partner in justice, Vanessa Scott, today. She was not able to make our show today, but sorry guys, you have me, Benita, the co-host. And we're here today with No Traffic Ahead, and we are all working with the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking and many other organizations and coalitions around the Bay Area to bring awareness and solutions to the problem of trafficking and big events. And so we're going to jump into that a little bit. And Brian, I'm going to go back to you and tell me a little more where you left off our last segment.
Yeah, well, when we realized that the Bay Area had gotten Super Bowl 50, my colleague Betty Ann and I began to talk about not so much that trafficking is going to increase around it, and which we'll address later, but that it seemed like it'd be a great milestone just to bring everybody together, kind of give us a focal point to gather efforts in a collective and collaborative way. And so we started talking about this whole idea of a mapping project. And Betty Ann was working on this service learning class with Sharon and Stefan and Catherine. Mm-hmm. And as our ideas began to evolve about training maps, we sat down with Stefan in a little outdoor patio at the law school one day and started talking about this and realized that this could be a great effort along with the South Bay Coalition to do some of these to build this into a larger project, which we'll explain more about what's going on later. And so that's kind of morphed into No Traffic Ahead, and we are excited about the potential that this can have to build the capacity of the Bay Area to fight trafficking. Really cool.
And I want to get back to that, but I have to ask you all a question first before we do. So don't let me forget to get back to that. There's been in the news of late, and Jason, I guess I'm going to throw this question at you. There's been big sporting events where big known athletes have been caught solicitation right? And exploiting whomever it was they came in contact with. Can you address that?
Well, I think I would approach it this way. So I think it was earlier said on the call that, Super Bowl, certainly in general, but specifically Super Bowl 50 is an incredible platform. And, obviously when bad things happen the platform lends itself to those things being highly publicized. And certainly that has been the case both with Super Bowls, with other events, and of course happens every day, which is, I think, what we're all working around is, what happens in the silence and what isn't brought to light that we want to equally both condemn and find the systematic ways to address it. But I guess I would say that, we are, as a Super Bowl host committee, very committed to the idea that because the Super Bowl platform is such a visible one, and because the Bay Area is challenged with this issue of human trafficking on such a significant scale year-round, that this is an opportunity for us to join up with partners who work on this every day, who work very collaboratively across industries to figure out how we can use this platform to actually make sure that people are both aware that this is an issue that affects the Bay Area and something that we should be fighting to end. And so just in a practical way, some of the things that we're going to try to do is we have to recruit and train thousands of volunteers. And this is something we had the privilege of announcing at the Freedom Summit just 2 months back, was that all of those volunteers are going to have the opportunity to participate in training so that they can become eyes and ears on the ground. They will be our ambassadors Super Bowl week out in the airports and hotels, some of the places we know that these are moments and places where trafficking occurs, and we want to make sure that our volunteers are trained to spot, be aware of signs of trafficking, and know how to properly report them. So that's something we're committed to doing with the thousands of volunteers that we'll recruit to participate in Super Bowl week.
Right, and exactly. We're going to get to volunteers shortly, but I love what you said. The point is, it doesn't just necessarily take a big sporting event or a big event of some sort. This happens every day. Men, women, and children are exploited, and we should educate ourselves and be on the lookout. When I say we, the regular citizen, the common citizen, as well as law enforcement and all the players, the medical staff at hospitals and the travel industry, hotels, all of us as citizens should become aware, and not just aware, but be educated to keep an eye out to quite possibly help save a life. Sharon, could you tell us a little more about a systematic approach that we've been talking about?
So I think what we started noticing last year is that every single week someone was coming to the table and saying, we want to do this with regards to the Super Bowl. We want to do this with regards to human trafficking. And really, we have a lot of resources in the Bay Area, but individually, we're very limited in our resources. So really, to make a collective impact, we bring together all these players. So in order to do that in a systematic way, we thought of this idea of No Traffic Ahead, which is essentially, and I can go into kind of the specifics of it, but essentially we're trying to use the Super Bowl as an opportunity to engage partners that we haven't engaged before. So really, that means a lot of our local businesses that maybe they haven't been aware of this issue, or they feel maybe it doesn't impact them in their business. But we're hoping to start training businesses, especially our service industries, because they can serve as the eyes and ears. And a lot of times they have employees that may come from communities where they then can serve as the eyes and ears as well. So in order to systematically do that, No Traffic Ahead is attempting to do a mapping system where we can actually track which businesses have received outreach, and we're creating momentum where it's like a cultural shift where we're trying to get businesses to be really proactive and say, you know what, we do care about this issue. We're going to receive training on this issue, and now you can see us on this mapping system as being a business that has now been proactive about this.
Very good. Very good.
And we're not just going to leave the businesses who want training out there hanging, right? Part of the big part of the project, if I can mention real quick, is just we're developing a whole database of the people around the Bay Area who do trainings and the criteria of what kind of trainings they do and who the demographic is, et cetera, so that if you are a business that wants to get on the map, they can just pull up this database of trainers, and then we're connecting the trainers with those who want to be trained.
And that is so key because all of us here in the room on the call, we all do this work and we all have our sense of training, right? And the trainings that we do. So that is key to spread the love, and that would allow us to get more out there and that type of thing. So Catherine, we have a little bit of time left in this segment. Can you introduce us to the work group the survivor work group that we're working on?
Yes, one of the projects that we initiated with the students is to use some of the local nonprofits working with trafficking survivors to put together a focus group, and we are sitting down with them on several occasions to brainstorm and basically get their perspective on two different issues. One is techniques for direct outreach, and basically trying to figure out ways that we can reach people who are in a trafficking situation, get them information, get them the knowledge that there are ways to find help and people and agencies who want to help them. And so we're trying to get the ideas from people who were in these situations and have an insight that, outsiders don't. And then the other part of the survivor focus group is trying to come up with a group of survivors who are interested and willing to talk to the media on their own terms about their stories, so that when the Super Bowl gets closer and journalists on television and print and online want to, interview someone and write a story, we'll already have people who have been trained, empowered to tell their own story as they want it told.
And that's a good key, and we'll pick that up when we get back after this segment of Abolition Radio.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Vanessa Scott with Abolition Radio, where every week we invite you to join the fight to bring an end to human trafficking. Abolition Radio is the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails, our nonprofit which is dedicated to the rehabilitation, education, and protection of youth involved or at risk of becoming involved in domestic sex trafficking. Our goal with Abolition Radio is to eradicate human trafficking in all forms, sex trafficking and labor trafficking locally and globally. We are excited to bring this program to KFAX as we will share stories of hope and opportunities to mobilize the body of Christ and turn this audience into an army of gospel activists who will speak up for justice and act on behalf of those who are trapped or recovering from slavery. Find us on Facebook at Abolition Radio or on the web at abolitionradio.org, and join me each Saturday at 3 p.m. for an exciting episode of Abolition Radio right here on AM 1100 KFAX.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
And thanks for joining us here today with Abolition Radio. And Catherine, thank you so much for sharing about our survivor work group. And I think you said two key words that I wanted to just piggyback on, and that was empowerment. That is key with survivors, empowering them to take the next steps to wholeness, right? And us learning to be sensitive to the needs of the survivor. So it's very important that we have that work group to bring them to the table, to help us, to educate us as well. There are some other educational points that we have been learning and and trying to participate in?
Yeah, I think the media project kind of brings up one of the pieces that we learned through the different case studies that we did, and that's that criminalization is really hurtful in addressing this issue of trafficking, and that's why it's so important to have the voices of survivors come through. We had a couple other major kind of learnings from these case studies where we looked at the London Olympics, South Africa World Cup, we looked at the Super Bowl in New Jersey, New York, Tampa, New Orleans, and Dallas, I believe it was.
And Arizona.
Arizona.
And Arizona is our latest one. And from those case studies, a few of the major things that we'll probably all speak about to some extent is that really the data with regards to the connection between the Super Bowl and human trafficking, it's not comprehensive enough to be conclusive at all. Another one is that labor trafficking is virtually ignored in the discussion. That partnership really is the key to a lot of success, and that media sensationalism can actually be really harmful. We want to bring the issue to the attention of the larger public as well as to people who haven't been engaged before, but we have to be very accurate in the way that we do that. So I guess we can speak a little bit more about the actual data. I'll let Stefan speak because he's very refined and sophisticated.
Well, I think there are a lot of people, a lot of the data or a lot of the information that's out there in the public domain about the correlation or the supposed correlation between human trafficking and these kinds of major sporting events are anecdotal. And so there'd be an individual victim or an individual survivor who talks about his or her experience specifically being trafficked to a Super Bowl. Or you have law enforcement officials who talk about, operations that they conducted where they, identified individuals, both male, female, underage, of age, who claimed the same thing, who claimed that they had been trafficked. Increasingly, though, however, and it really came to a head after the New York, New Jersey Super Bowl, some of the activists in the anti-trafficking movement have spoken out and saying, well, not only is this law enforcement focus potentially counterproductive, but also, law enforcement officials are increasingly staging operations to go or to be right around the time of the Super Bowl. And so if an FBI operation that enjoys generous financial support and generous human resources manages to identify 30 individuals in the weeks surrounding a Super Bowl, that doesn't mean that those same resources are being applied to the problem before and after that time. Right. And so if you really look at some of these operations, for example, in the most recent operation in Arizona, there was a lot of news about a major law enforcement operation that managed to identify a number of survivors or victims. But that was a nationwide effort, spearheaded actually out of Cook County, Illinois. And so, whether that's still directly related to human trafficking, and particularly human trafficking that is Super Bowl related, or whether that's a very welcome nationwide law enforcement operation that focuses on human trafficking in general, that's up to the eye of the beholder. What we're focusing on really is it almost seems like a useless debate, and one that can possibly detract from the very real issues that we all know exist in the Bay Area that have nothing to do. I mean, none of us started doing this work because of the Super Bowl. Right. And presumably we'll continue doing this work after February 2016. Exactly. And so the real issue is that all of a sudden a lot of media and a lot of commentators are going to be focusing on this event, and they will be trying to frame it as an event that has to do with the Super Bowl. Right. And I think from our perspective, we should use that momentum and use that media attention, but also use it in ways that reflect accurately the nature of the problem that's going to continue being with us.
And will continue to give us long-term sustainability. Because it's so true what you just said. Because the NBA championships were here, here back and forth between here and Cleveland, we got that call. You're an anti-trafficking group. Can you do this? And we did, but you're right, that it's always this momentum around these events. But what about, like we're saying, the everyday, empowerment and everyday education and those action steps?
Well, I think there'll be a lot of those calls that different organizations are going to, should prepare and are preparing to receive.
Right.
And what's really important is to have the right message in those calls. I mean, from the media perspective, I'm not a member of the media. But from the media perspective, there's certainly a type of story that people will want to tell. And in the Bay Area, there's maybe 3 or 4 types of stories that you hear repeatedly. And the question is, if that story doesn't accurately reflect the type of people that we all work with or the type of clients that come into our respective organizations, do we want to sort of provide the media with the story that they want? Or do we sort of use the opportunity to describe the nature of human trafficking in the ways that we're seeing it happen. So, for example, Sharon mentioned earlier, labor trafficking. Labor trafficking doesn't typically figure into the kind of story that the media is looking for. But if the media comes calling, perhaps it's time to really reflect. For example, in the South Bay, estimates are between 40 and 60% of the trafficking that's happening there is labor trafficking. So is that an issue that needs to be discussed? And is that an issue that needs to be highlighted?
You say media doesn't tend to ask that question, which is around them so much, so much. Very good point. Very good point. Wow, it's something you just said, and I was gonna make mention of that, but it was really, really good. It'll come back to me, though. It will come back to me at some point. Brian, what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think we just want to make sure people understand that where there will be a lot of hype around the Super Bowl, you'll be hearing about the perceived correlation between trafficking and the Super Bowl. We want to remind people that trafficking happens today. It's going to happen after the Super Bowl comes and goes. And we're hoping the Super Bowl is just an opportunity with all the public awareness to really help bring people together around it and build our capacity to respond to it better.
I remember what it was now. Stefan mentioned messaging. That's something we have been working on for a year now, really. On the messaging is key. And hopefully in the messaging, we're educating not just those who know nothing about it, but those who feel they know, whether it's the media, whether it's law enforcement, whomever. But messaging is key. How you message something is very key.
Absolutely. I think at the core of our messaging really is that our focus is on exploitation. Next year, around the time of the Super Bowl, will there be exploitation happening in Santa Clara? Absolutely. Does it happen every other day?
Yes.
Absolutely. Are individuals who may come to that area being exploited in other cities around the U.S. on other days? Absolutely. So that really brings us back to the long-term sustainability. If we really want to make an impact, if we really want to address this issue, it can't just be on one day. It has to be every other day as well. But this is a great opportunity because, as Stefan was mentioning, law enforcement really benefits from a higher level of collaboration because of these large sporting events, and we're really trying to foster that connection and collaboration and partnership so that we can focus on not criminalizing survivors, that we can really provide services in a holistic manner. And so really this energy has been fantastic in bringing together so many different groups that have been working in their own silos, and now we're bringing it all together.
Actually, let me just throw in one other important aspect of this effort, which is the cross-county collaboration.
Yes,
which
I was thinking the same thing.
Truly spectacular.
Yes. And we'll come back to that with another segment of Abolition Radio.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages.
This is Pastor Gary from Faith Fellowship in San Leandro. We are so excited about the launch of Abolition Radio every Saturday. And we have seen Love Never Fails under Vanessa Scott grow right here in San Leandro out of our church at Faith Fellowship. And now her ministry God gave her a passion to get young people out of the sex trafficking and sex slave industry. And she has been doing a phenomenal job. Not only is it locally, but now it's going globally. In fact, I prophesied to her that God was going to use her to go nationwide, and that's exactly what's been happening. She is a woman with a vision, with a direction, and a passion to see these young people come out of this kind of arena. And to God be the glory. Join with her every Saturday on Abolition Radio to hear what she has to say and then become a part of what she's doing. AbolitionRadio.org. Love never fails.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
Welcome back to another segment of Abolition Radio. And when we left the last segment, Stefan was mentioning about the work that we are doing and the areas that the work group all comes from. And we have, the work group has individuals, organizations, individuals, law enforcement, victim services, as far north as San Francisco and Marin area, all the way down to the Monterey Bay area. So I think, Catherine, you had mentioned that as well, that we definitely have a collaboration of people who are really working hard toward long-term sustainability. And I love that phrase, long-term sustainability.
And this is actually the first multi-county work group that's dedicated itself to this issue, which is one of the great successes out of coming together for the Super Bowl, but with long-term ideas. That's great.
Stefan, you had mentioned a case study, a New York, New Jersey case study.
Yeah, so I think Sharon mentioned earlier that one of the first things that we did was look at a number of different areas or different cities that had hosted major sporting events. And one of the themes that we found there, Sharon mentioned it already, was collaboration. Specifically, one of the issues that we all work on, typically we have these county-based groups that work pretty well at the county level. But obviously, a place like San Francisco, there are numerous counties, numerous cities, all of whom are very large: Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, and all the little cities in between. So it's really incumbent to develop new types of relationships and new types of collaborative structures. And of course, we all have our different funding patterns. And so it really requires some out-of-the-box thinking.
Yes.
And that's one of the themes that we heard. The methodology that we used for these case studies was asking people who had been very deeply involved in the Super Bowl, in the preparations for the Super Bowls, and people who had been obviously in the field of anti-human trafficking. And we asked them to reflect on what they might do differently if they had to do it again. And one of the common themes that came up over and over again was we would think earlier and harder about that kind of collaboration. One of the themes that came up from the London Olympics case study, though, also was they did, in fact, think very hard, because it was a nationally driven issue, the preparation there. They did think very hard about building new types of collaborative relationships that the activists hadn't been involved in previously. But those relationships expired the day that the Olympics were over. And so they said, gee, it would have been really nice. I mean, we had relationships with folks who we had never worked with in the past. It'd be nice if we would still be able to sit down, because it probably won't come as a surprise to many listeners that trafficking still exists in London even after the Olympics.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of the themes also, not just developing those relationships and sitting down in a room for the first time together, but also continuing those relationships even after. Benita, I'm sure it will come as no surprise to you or to others listening that one of the biggest flows of trafficking is actually intra-Bay Area.
Right.
People recruited from one part of the Bay Area and being brought to another part of the Bay Area. Right. So for those of us who have stereotypes that it's only an international issue, those are wrong. Those stereotypes are simply wrong. And the kinds of collaboration that's being developed around this issue, thanks to the Super Bowl, or thanks to the sort of incentive of needing to collaborate, should really continue to exist and flourish afterwards.
That's so true. And you're right. When we walk the streets, one of our questions is when we establish a relationship with whomever is on the street, we always ask, are you from around here, or where are you from? And I have had as far as Oklahoma, Arizona, everywhere. So you're right. We do have the influx of people from other states, but we have a lot of influx of people here in the Bay Area as well. You mentioned that long-term sustainability. So what are some of the things that we're thinking about as a work group here in the Bay Area, teaching, educating people about this, what we want to do to be ready and what we want to be happen after February?
Well, I think one of the big things that we want, and we're talking about public awareness is one piece, so really broadening their horizon about what is human trafficking. Usually you'll meet someone and they have a very specific idea of who a victim is, where they're from, and what kind of exploitation they're suffering.
Right.
And so really expanding that horizon is one really big goal. So through outreach and awareness, so that we can really show, the labor trafficking side of things, that sometimes it appears to be somebody who has a lot of control over their life, but as an adult or as a man, and that, in fact, is not representative, that they may actually be exploited at that time. The other thing is that connecting all these different partners, a lot of people are it's still a very new field in the sense that we're all still figuring out what the best practices are.
Right.
There's a lot of promising approaches, and the best way for us to learn about that is what's working with other organizations, what are the challenges you faced. And so that's one of the other really big long-term successes that we see, is that just fostering those connections, we're actually learning about what best practices are.
And I think as training goes out, we've worked to identify the key demographics that are most likely to see instances of human trafficking. So we really want to see an expansion of this training and outreach map to get populated with, for example, hotels, the transportation industry, whether that's airports, buses, rideshare companies, taxi drivers, restaurants and bars. And so that's part of the whole effort that we're putting into this.
And you guys, Brian, the Bay Area Anti-Trafficking Coalition, have reached out and have been responsible for bringing training to the major airports, San Jose and Oakland. I know.
We're hoping that the 3 major Bay Area airports will get trained again this coming year.
That's what I was going to ask. Are we going to do that again? I heard on the radio this morning or late last night, days for me sometimes kind of run together. One of the airlines was mentioning how either they were going to be training their staff, the airline staff, and or they were asking for that training. And I thought that was great. Not necessarily had nothing to do with the Super Bowl, but I think that is a great thing that an airline, they all need to be educating, to be on the lookout for.
Well, I think also another long-term goal for No Traffic Ahead and using this momentum is to reach out to other businesses that either think this has nothing to do with me or just don't want to be associated with the word or the term human trafficking, but to make them realize that they're part of the same community and have a stake in it and a responsibility, and they can actually make a difference. And then the consumers, we're hoping, will want more and more businesses who will take a stand against human trafficking. And
exactly.
So just educating more broadly in the business sector is also an important task.
Yeah. And I also want to make a point, in this work, we've worked with a fair amount of lawyers, and there are only very few lawyers in the Bay Area who do provide legal services to survivors of human trafficking. And part of the reason is because they have to have such an incredible knowledge of the other types of services that are around. Any of us maybe in this room have a pretty good Filofax or sort of Palm Pilot, whatever the modern equivalent is, of different contacts in the area who do work on trafficking, but the average individual probably doesn't. And so these kind of collaborative relationships that we're talking about are really important, and making those transparent and easily accessible.
Yes.
For example, I have one person that I know of who said, a lot of my clients I work with for years, and then all of a sudden they show up in Los Angeles and they ask me, where can I get dental services in Los Angeles? And they have no idea. And so the same lawyer who's sitting in Los Angeles wondering about where can I get dental services here in San Francisco if one of their clients moves here, can more easily get that information. in part because of the work that No Traffic Ahead is doing.
And that's great. Doing great work. We'll be right back with another segment of Abolition Radio.
We'll be back with more Abolition Radio right after these messages from our sponsors.
Trash bills weighing you down? At Case Industries, we specialize in lowering waste costs and providing trash consolidation and compaction services for multifamily properties, condos, and commercial shopping centers. Let us help you reduce operating expenses and increase property NOI. Case Industries, saving the planet, saving you money. Contact us today for a property trash and recycling assessment online at caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. That's caseindustries.us or call 510-566-4223. Case Industries, the property manager's friend.
Hi, I'm Sandra Herrera, CEO of Case Industries. I've found that many employers are looking for ways to help the community but don't know how. I encourage you to consider supporting Abolition Radio as a corporate sponsor. Love Never Fails offers all the resources necessary to help young women and men overcome the trauma of exploitation and abuse. And that's why I'm proud to have Case Industries supporting Abolition Radio.
Welcome back to Abolition Radio, where you are invited to join the fight against human trafficking.
Thank you, and welcome back to another rendition and segment of Abolition Radio. And we want to just thank Jason Tremieux for his time. He had to run, but if you are interested in volunteering during the time of the Super Bowl host committee is looking for volunteers now. And if you're interested, go to SF, as in San Francisco, sfbaysuperbowl.com and sign up to be a volunteer, and you will begin getting training how to spot human trafficking and how to really help during the time of the Super Bowl, but also be educated for sustainability beyond the Super Bowl. Who has events coming up? Brian.
For the Bay Area Anti-Trafficking Coalition, we train ambassadors who go out to different events around the Bay Area to staff tables and answer people's questions, distribute information, and things like that. We're training a new set of ambassadors on August 29th at the end of the summer. So put that on your calendar. You can go to our website to check things out, bwaatc.org.
So tell us a little bit more, really briefly, about volunteering for the No Traffic Ahead Workgroup.
So we'll be mobilizing volunteers to be a part of this big business outreach and training effort. And so we hope that we will be training these volunteers on how to go out and speak to these businesses and find out if they've been trained or if they desire training, and establish how they could be on the map and whether or not we can put them on the map. And so that will be happening toward the end of summer or beginning of fall. We'll get a calendar date soon. For people who want to stay up to date and get more information about volunteer opportunities with No Traffic Ahead, we have a website with a form you can put your name in and information. It's notrafficahead.com. That's no traffic with a CK ahead.com, and they can sign up.
And we're starting right in the hospitality area, arena, and restaurants and hotels, right?
That's right. So also, Jason jumped off the line before we could give him a huge thank you. But the Super Bowl host committee has been really supportive of our efforts and are helping us engage with the Restaurant Association as well as the Hotel Council, so we can start training through that forum. But we're also going to be having volunteers actually going out and proactively speaking to businesses, the managers and the owners, to get them to start thinking about the issue. I should also mention that if you have an organization that wants to engage on a more intense kind of level with No Traffic Ahead, that we also have an email address, and you can email us at notrafficahead at Gmail.
Okay. And that's traffic, also, again, the CK, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So I know today we have given you a wealth of information, and a lot of it. So feel free to reach out to any of us. The email you just heard Sharon mention, notrafficahead at gmail.com, the BAATC.org, or loveneverfailsus.com. abolitionradio.com. If you have any questions, or Abolition Radio, you can .org. You can like our Facebook page as well. Go and let us know if you are interested in volunteering. We will pass that information over to you if you forget one of the emails or websites. And we want to invite you, Love Never Fails would like to invite you out to the Alameda County Fair on July 3rd at 4 o'clock. We will be on one of the stages there, I forget the name, and for our annual Love Never Fails tour from 4 to 5 on July 3rd at the Alameda County Fair. Thank you all for being here today. This has been a pleasure and a joy, and we really have a lot of work ahead of us. We've put in a lot of work thus far, but we have a lot of work to go, and our work doesn't end in February 2016. Our work goes far beyond that time in that we do. We are in it to win it, to conquer it, really. Exploitation in the long-term sustainability, I should say. We are all for that. And I do miss my partner in justice today, Miss Vanessa Scott. I will get you for this. And if you have not heard from anyone today, or anyone around you has never said these 3 words, please know from us today that you are loved.
Thanks for joining us this week on Abolition Radio. We trust that you've been inspired by these stories of hope and survival, and that you'll accept our challenge to get involved by contacting us at abolitionradio.org, by liking and sharing our page on Facebook, Facebook/Abolition Radio, or by making a contribution directly to Love Never Fails. Abolition Radio is the broadcast outreach of Love Never Fails, which is a donor-supported, nonprofit ministry that Vanessa founded as a way of directly impacting the lives of young people who are trapped in or at risk of becoming involved in sex trafficking. This broadcast needs your involvement and support. To find out more, simply go to abolitionradio.org and click on Love Never Fails. Today's program was brought to you in part by Case Industries and with major support from the staff and membership and donors at Faith Fellowship Church. Our theme song, Courage to Believe, is by Justin McRoberts. Hear more about his passion for justice and art at justinmcroberts.com. Our audio engineer is Jarrell Martin, and this is Dave Naderhood. On behalf of Vanessa, Benita, and the whole team at Love Never Fails, thanks for listening, and thanks even more for taking action to help set captives free.
You were in the neighborhoods we live in. You were in the ones we're passing by. You were in the ones we call our neighbors, and the ones who still sleep our eyes.